Hello, everybody. I hope that this is connecting well onto Church Communications Facebook group. Welcome to everyone to the first episode of the Reach Teach Show. My name's Joanna, and I'm so glad to be with you today, and really pumped, really honored to be able to connect with you live here on the social medias, on the Facebooks. We're going to be doing this on Mondays for the next little while, and of course in many ways this is an experiment. We want to see if this helps you, if this encourages you, if this equips you, and really if this is something that you want in your life. So appreciate that, Kenny and Katie, who are running this group, have invited me and a few others to come on and do some of these live chats with you. So today I'm talking to you from my home. You're in my living room. I'm in Toronto, Canada. So if there's anyone who's going to be watching today, or maybe later if you're watching the replay of this, if you're not watching live, if you're not from the US, you got to leave a shout out below. Leave a comment, because I'd love to know who you are, where you're watching from, and really just like what's going on with you as a church communications person, especially if you're not in the US, just because there's less of us here on the church communications group who are not American. I serve in the Canadian church, and I'd love to tell you, I think if we start off the show, I should tell you first, I'm going to tell you about what this show even is. What are you doing here if you're joining me live? Or also, who the heck am I? Why am I talking to you? Why have I been given the privilege of having a few minutes of your time? All throughout, I'm going to keep saying, feel free to leave a comment below, ask a question. I think that some of these comments take a second to come in for me to be able to see them, but I'm going to try and keep tracking with them and answer stuff as soon as I see it, I guess. So, Reach and Teach Show, I was talking to Kenny, who's running this channel, who's running this group, with Katie, about what I wanted to do in a show, and the number one thing for me was about reaching people. By that I mean evangelism, outreach, reaching people outside the church, and teaching people. By that I mean discipleship. How do we grow people and teach people about our Christian faith using these things, these amazing tools that we have in the palms of our hands, our screens? How can we use social media, digital content, creative means of all kinds to reach people in 2020 and to teach people in 2020 this amazing and best news in the world. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself as we roll in here. And hey, here's me. This is me. My name is Joanna Fleur. This is a photo taken actually like right outside my house. I live in the heart of downtown Toronto. If you've ever been to Toronto, shout out, leave a comment if you've ever been to my amazing city or country. And Toronto is the largest city in Canada. It's the third largest city in North America. So it's like New York, LA, and then Toronto would be the third largest after that. I'm not sure if you knew that of us, but we're a pretty huge city here. Millions of people hanging out here in Toronto, including Drake and Justin Bieber and I don't know, a few others like that. And I live and work in Toronto. I have been in the church communication space I started when I was a teenager, but officially in that space now for 10 to 15 years now. And so I am just grateful to do this. And I want to tell you a little bit about my story today. But what it looks like today is that I'm a speaker and I'm a podcaster. I have a TV show here in Canada that I co-host with some other people and do Bible teaching on that show across Canada. You can catch it on YouTube if you want to see what that is. I can tell you about that later. You can message me below and I can try and send you a link to it. And I'm a consultant, so consulting churches, ministries, missions, nonprofits, all about church communications and how to do strategy and how to think about the digital world that we live in. What are affordable ways and realistic ways with limited time, money, budgets, people skill sets, etc. How do we reach people, and how do we teach people about Jesus and for Jesus? And so just in the bottom of that, you'll see it says global perspective, and then this thing about theologically grounded approach. What I mean about global perspective is I've had an opportunity to live in places all over the world. I'm grateful for that. And I'm really just, I think that the global stuff has really lent it to my perspective being a bit broader than just maybe American or North American in approach. And theologically grounded, what I mean is I'm not just a practitioner from a business perspective. I also have a master's in theology that really informs my thinking about that. So I can share a little bit more about that as we go along. But hey, if you have any questions, if you have a background in business, like maybe the communications business pragmatic side, or maybe the theology side, I'd love to know. If you want to comment below, if you're watching, I'd love to know which side you come at this from and what your interest in church communications kind of comes under in your work, in your life. Why are you part of this group? And that'd be just cool, so I can lean one way or the other in how I answer. So let me tell you a little bit of my own story before we dive further into some really practical stuff. I want to make sure every time we get together for this half hour, it's going to be Mondays. It's 2:00 Eastern time, so that's 1:00 Central, which is, oh gosh, what's the math on that? We're going to be 11 a.m. on the Pacific Coast, trying to hit people somewhere around lunchtime. But if it's not lunchtime and you're watching like the rerun later, that's great too. Whenever you're watching this, we'd love to know too, like as we're learning to do this show, what's helpful to you, even in terms of the time of the show. If lunchtime or around lunchtime isn't good for you, then like tell us, and we can try and figure out a better time that works for people to want to like take a break, have a coffee or a tea or I don't know, whatever your thing is, and join so we can have some great interaction. That's the kind of fun and beauty of these live shows versus just like a video stream where all I do is talk at you and you don't get a chance to kind of respond, engage, and all that kind of stuff. So let me tell you a little bit about myself as we get going into this Reach and Teach show. So my name is Joanna, as I said, and I'm here in Toronto, Canada. And I started out in my kind of education and direction in life in the business world. So I did an undergraduate degree in business and communications. And there were a lot of reasons for that. Some of it had to do with money, like there was money, I thought, in business and communications versus ministry stuff. I'd been involved in ministry like as a volunteer all through high school. I'd been leading stuff in church and camps and communication stuff for years, but it was always a side thing. I never imagined it to be like a job. And so I went into marketing and communications, specifically with high-tech companies. And some of my reason for that too, I think I was scared of what ministry might look like. And also I didn't have a great context of what that could look like as a woman. I just hadn't seen a lot of women lead in my context in church. And so I thought as a woman who could lead, I was going to do that in the business world. So maybe that's your experience too. You're coming at church communications from a business perspective. You are? I'd love to know. You can leave a comment below and tell me about that. I'd love to get to know you too. But in this whole thing, I was working at this high-tech company for a while after I finished university, or college as you call it in the US. I finished my undergraduate degree, and I was working at a tech company. It doesn't really matter what the company did for the purposes of the story, but if you can imagine with me what the main product was and what the main product looked like that we were selling, and I was doing PR, event, marketing, comm stuff. I was a young person on the team, so I had a little bit of help and hand in lots of stuff in this tech startup. But the main product we sold was a big black box. At least that's what it looked like. There's technology inside. You'd buy stacks of them if you were a tech company or an internet company, and you'd use this to help read stuff on your own network. So the Photoshop guy, the graphic designer, pulls me over and has Photoshop up on his screen. And he's on, he pulls me into his cubicle, he's on Photoshop, and he's got this main product up on the screen, this big black box. And he's trying different effects and colors and trying different things. And he's asking me, what do I like best? And he says to me, Joanna, what can I do to make this look sexy? And I'm like, well, there's nothing you can do to make this look sexy. It's just a big black box. And in that moment, in that cubicle, in the middle of that startup tech company, I really felt like God spoke to me. And he said, Joanna, like, what are you doing? You don't care about the big black box. And you know you're supposed to use this exact same skill set in marketing and business and communication, digital technology, all that stuff. You know you're supposed to use it for the church. What are you doing selling big black boxes? And so there was nothing wrong with the big black box. It wasn't it wasn't sinful or anything to sell big black boxes. It was just that I didn't really care about the big black box. And so as a result of that, I really was just sort of chasing down things that were wasting my time because it wasn't what I was supposed to do. So very soon after that, I had no idea what to do with what I felt like God had said to me that day, but very soon after that, God gave me an opportunity to start working in a local church that I was attending. From there, I've worked now in a number of churches. Just in June of 2019, I finished time spent. I was 9 years on the staff of a church that started with no communications department to it being like a part of my job to like a project to a part of my job to my full job to like a whole department. As the church grew and as the value of communications grew, my role within it grew as well. And so an encouragement to you, if you're in a place where there's no communications team, there's no communications department, there's no budget line for communications, just an encouragement to you that I too know that. I started in that exact same place. I know exactly how it feels. Maybe that's you. Leave a comment. Let me know if that's your scenario, and we can work together over the course of this show, this Reach and Teach show, to figure out how to have strategies, practical stuff for you in that context where there's no communications budget, there's no communications team. This isn't even really your job. You just kind of care about it, but you're not even sure what to do with that. So that's where I started. And now fast forward for the last 7 months, I left that role. I still attend the church. I love the church, but I no longer work at the church because now I have the great privilege of helping tons of churches, ministries, missions organizations, nonprofits do strategic communications. I say all the time, if you listen to my podcast is called Word Made Digital. And on the Word Made Digital podcast, I say all the time that the church has the best news in the world. So we should be the best communicators in the world. But of course, often we're not. Often we're behind and struggling and trying to figure out how to do that. And really that's kind of the heart behind this show, the heart behind why I wanted to do this. When Kenny and Katie approached me and said, do you want to do a show every week? I said, yes, if we can talk about the why behind it. Because for me, the why behind it is about reaching people and teaching people. It's about telling people about the best news in the world, actually making good news sound like good news, because a lot of the time I think we have a reputation in church of making good news sound like scary or depressing or just not good. It doesn't sound very good. And so I want to hang out with you guys every week and talk about how to make good news sound like good news. So there's a few, for me, guiding scriptures in that. There's a few things that have shaped me, because as I've said too, I came with a business background, but along the way later on, I did get a master's in theology, because coming out of a business background, I really wanted to couple that with the communication side of things. And so when I did that, some of the guiding scriptures and some of the stuff I worked on in my thesis was all around digital communication for evangelism. And so again, the nature and the heart behind the show that we're going to be doing here every week is about that. And so some of the scriptures that I think about I want to throw up here on the screen. Guiding scriptures for me in what I do, John chapter 1 and Matthew 25. John chapter 1 is that text where it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word is God, the Word was God. And then it says, or as Eugene Peterson writes it in the Message, that the Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. And so I called my podcast Word Made Digital because I'm fascinated by this thing out of John chapter 1 about, of course, all through the book of John, you can think of all kinds of names that Jesus is called or calls himself. And maybe, again, throw some down below if you can think of some that we aren't going to name. But, Jesus is the light, the way, the truth, the life. He's the vine, and you are the branches. He's all these kinds of things. But the book starts with Jesus as the Word. And it really reveals from the very opening of the text, word, logos, that of all the things he could use to describe himself in the opening of this text, the announcement of his coming to earth is communication. That Jesus, the incarnation of God, is trying to tell us something, communicate something to us. And the same thing in Genesis. Of course, John chapter 1, in the beginning was the Word, harkens back to, in the beginning, Genesis 1, God created the heavens and the earth. And when God creates, he doesn't just think the world and all of creation into being. He doesn't, dance it into being. All the ways, we might be able to come up with silly ways that he might have done it, but they seem silly to us because he spoke the world into being. He actually communicated what was created, and it was so. And so the work of communication, the work of partnering with God in this great commission, the bringing of the Word to people, the Word made flesh, or the Word made digital in 2020 is, I think, a very sacred and significant thing that we're doing. And what you're doing matters so much. It's so important that you're doing it. The other scripture that I have up here is Matthew 25, and you can see it's the Word and our talents. So the Word is John chapter 1, and Matthew 25 is the scripture about the parable of the talents. I highlight that one to you. If you know it, put your little hand up emoji down below. But if you know the text, it's basically about the landowner who gives and entrusts something of his own to people, and he goes away, and when he comes back, he wants to see what they've done with what he's given them. And my encouragement to all of us is that, yes, there's risk involved, and yes, it can feel scary, but that God, who has entrusted us with something, talents, gifts, resources, iPhones, whatever it may be that you use, he wants us to do something with it. He wants us to invest in it, even the bare minimum. Even if all you can do is start a Facebook group for your community, or do something very, very basic. It's like when the landowner comes back, it says, you could have just, when the guy who didn't do anything, he says, why'd you bury it in the ground? You could have at least put it in the bank and it would have earned interest. So you could have at least built a website or something, just something so basic to invest in what you've been entrusted with. And so those are, for me, guiding scriptures in why I do what I do. But because this show is intended to be practical, I'm obviously spending a ton of time today, since we're just getting to know each other on the first show, about who I am, or maybe my heart, my passion, my context behind why I do what I do, and why I want to be with you every week on this show and help you as much as I can, is my story and the context of that. But in the meantime, I also want to give you as much practical stuff as I can. And one of the things I wanted to talk about today, I see on the time clock here, this side, we just have 10 minutes left together today. And so I want to lean into some things around the difference between meeting real needs versus meeting felt needs. And I believe that if we're talking about reaching people and then later being able to teach them, we usually reach and then we get to teach, is that we need to meet people's, what the thing is that they feel that they need, their felt need, before we actually get to meet their real need. In some ways, and I don't mean this in a condescending way, but it's just a simple analogy. It's kind of like, as a parent, you know their real need of that kid is for vegetables and a good night's sleep and, whatever. There's lots of things that kids need to be healthy and whole and happy and stable in their life. But for a kid, they don't always feel the need to eat their vegetables or feel the need to go to bed. What their felt needs are often is for candy and ice cream and staying up late and all that kind of stuff. And so a lot of what we need to do then, if that's a parallel to communications, there are all kinds of real needs in the world. And as Christians, we would describe some of those needs as salvation, a need to have a relationship with God, a need to know that God loves them, that he has a plan for their life. All these kinds of things. There's many things that we as Christians might say are the real needs of people. But if we don't first meet some of their felt needs, some of the things they feel themselves on the surface, we're never going to be able to have the privilege of reaching their real needs. So let me kind of start to break this down, because I want to get to some practical examples. I want to use some specific things today that real churches are doing. So again, all along the way, if you have questions or comments, I'm trying to figure out how to look at them and view them. This is the first day of the live feed for me on this thing. I'm using, you can see down in the corner, I'm trying out eCam Live as a service to bring this program to you every week. And I'm learning how to use it. So bear with me. If we haven't figured out how to do the comment thing this week, I'll figure it out for next week. But meanwhile, this real needs versus felt needs. We don't have to look further than our Instagram feed, Facebook scrolling, stuff that we're hearing in the news to know what's going on with the felt needs of people. People in our culture are feeling things like anxiety. We know this is the age of anxiety. People are feeling things like how they don't have enough time. They are feeling things like they're stressed. They're feeling things like they are failing as a parent, or they're feeling things like, I know I'm supposed to eat healthy and exercise, but I just don't have the time, or I don't know where to start. Or, we're feeling all kinds of things. There are real needs, and then on top of those are the felt needs. So in the midst of trying to reach real needs, tell people that Jesus is the best news in the world and can change their whole life, you're never going to get to that conversation if we aren't first addressing the things that they feel, the things that are on the surface, the things that are very real to their day-to-day life. And so this can shake out into a ton of different things in terms of creative ways to communicate to people. But rather than coming out with posts with a video that's really directly on the nose saying, Jesus is the hope of the world, and you need Jesus and salvation, and come to the cross, and come to church on Sunday, and blah, blah, blah. The first things that we want to be doing when we're thinking about communicating to people who we're trying to reach is, what do they feel? Empathizing with what their felt struggles, problems, issues are of the day, of the week, the month, the year, their whole life. And then if we can meet them there where they're at, later we have the privilege of actually talking to them about things that are even more true and more real than the thing that they feel on the surface, their real need over their felt need. So there's some churches that are doing some amazing stuff with this, and I wanted to get really practical with you. Okay, so what if we could use, Facebook ads, something on Google searches or all that kind of stuff to actually reach the things that people were searching for every day. Millions and millions, billions of us are going on Google and we're searching for stuff. I'm searching for the movie times at my local theater. I'm searching for, I've searched for so many weird things already today. We all do this every day. We're going on there looking for things. But it's not very often if someone isn't feeling a need for church, they're probably not going to be looking up like church in my area and service times. But what they are looking for is things that are entertaining, or how to solve a problem in their life, or like answers to questions that they're struggling with that they feel on the surface, like how to gain more time, time management stuff, or how to raise their kids. So here's what it plays out as. I think a lot of us who are watching here would know Life Church, Craig Rochelle's church, amazing guy, amazing church. They give it so much of their stuff away for free. But there's something, for example, that they've been starting to do and experiment with in Google Ads. And one of those things is what people are searching for, their felt need, being met with and reached by what really the real need is below that. So, for example, if you were in the area of one of their life churches and you were searching for something like a divorce lawyer, your felt need is your marriage is falling apart, you're not sure what to do, you're at the end of yourself, and you're looking for a divorce lawyer. Well, what Life Church is doing is when you type in divorce lawyer in the city that they have a church in, instead, the first thing that's going to pop up on the top is an ad from them inviting you to a marriage group, or inviting you to Christian counseling, or inviting you to a church service or a sermon series that's going to be addressing your felt need, which is for like healing in your relationship, struggling when you don't know what to do, feeling alone, feeling like a failure, whatever it is that those felt needs are. They're going to meet that right where you are with your search on Google for the divorce lawyer with something more. You can do that with all kinds of things, if you can imagine. I have friends, here's another example, who have, they know that like something like 150,000 searches a day. It could be way more than that, but I'd have to check the stat. But people are searching on Google for how do I kill myself? That's their felt need. Their felt need is I want to end my life. And they're reaching people they bought the domain howtokillmyself.org. I think it is howtokillmyself.org, or it might be .com. You can search it. Go look for it today, howtokillmyself.org. And instead, when you go to this website, when you were searching for your felt need, which is I want this pain in my life to be over, what you find is a resource of people who love you, who are Christians, who provide hope and solution and resources for how to continue your life, and actually how to find healing and freedom from this horrible, horrible, dark place that you're in. They're meeting people's felt need by they're meeting people's real need. Their real need is for life. With their felt need, which is I want my life to end. And so they bought the domain and they got super creative with that. There's so many things like this. I mean, we think of what are some of the things in your city, in your town, that people are searching for like all the time on the internet. What are things that you Google, like movie theater times? What are things that you think are the felt needs of people in your city, the things that people are Googling for answers about, looking for a solution to their problem, that you could have an answer with a simple thing below that you set up as an ad for your church that is answering maybe with a counseling group, a therapy group, a thing for moms, an event that you guys are hosting that might meet people's needs for entertainment, or maybe it's I don't know, maybe people are looking for porn and you're gonna try and connect them with more healthy ways to find like real relationship in their life. So there's all kinds of ways that can do this, but the big idea I'm trying to get out of today's show is how can you think of meeting people's felt need before you have the privilege of meeting their real need? Just the same as with kids, we all know that everybody has to eat their vegetables, but not everybody wants to eat their vegetables. And so what are the ways we can bring the vegetables, like the healthy stuff, the stuff they really need, into what they're feeling they need, which is, I don't know, like cake or ice cream or something, which is why moms now make like zucchini cupcakes and stuff, because they're trying to like get the vegetables in. I don't mean that as a trick. I don't mean it as a bait and switch. I mean it more as a creative way to think of how to serve people right where they are with the thing that they feel that they need. And then over time, being able to have the privilege of actually getting into the heart of things behind that. into the things that really matter. All right, that's all for today. We've already run out of time. It's going so fast, these half hours. Leave comments below. Over the next few weeks, we're going to get super practical, and I can't wait to talk more with you all about how to reach people and teach people about the best news in the world.